Hey guys, my name is Haley and today we're going to be filming my August wrap-up and also my September TBR. I have been slowly losing my voice, please disregard. I know it's annoying. We're dealing with it today. That teacher life of working with kids in the fall is really wreaking havoc on my immune system, so that's where we're at. But spoiler alert for this entire video, I only read 6 books, I believe, in the month of August, which is my lowest reading month of the year. I was doing really well for a couple months there, and usually when I reach that point, I feel like August is usually my lowest reading month other than sometimes January, and I think this is my lowest after January, so that's where we're at. But I'm going to wrap up the 6 books I did read, and then we're going to get into a September TBR, because September and October TBRs are always a million years long, because there's so many spooky books I want to get to every year. But the first book that I finished in the month of August, I also just had a bunch of trips, so I'm like trying to be nice to myself. The first book I finished was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I finally read this one. I've been saying I was going to read it since like May or June when I got it. But this was just as good as everybody said it was. I will leave the vlog down below in which I read it during, but I adored the romance in this. The boy, like the male lead in this, was so sweet and so swoony. And it is worth just as much of the hype as everybody else is giving it. I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastic. Definitely going to be one of my favorite contemporaries for a while to come. It made me cry my eyes out as well. Next up, I spent a lot of this month like stuck on reading the same book just because I wasn't in a reading mood. I definitely watched a bunch of YouTube and have been working on a couple of other things in the background. Spoiler alert if you are here, I am planning to do spooky season specific blind dates with a book. So if you're interested in that, leave me some Halloween-esque emojis like ghost or a knife or one of those things in the comments down below, because I'm hoping to announce those very soon, with plenty of time before spooky season. And I've been working on that in the background as well, so that's been taking up a lot of my time. But there were a couple books that I definitely was reading for upwards of a week or two. Not because they weren't good books, just because I was doing a million other things and going on trips and working on stuff in the background. So reading did not take the priority this month at all. But the second book that I finished in the month was The Fae Keeper by H.E. Edgman. I gave this 5 stars. This book was one of those ones I talked about in my vlog where I was reading it with Just for the Summer, of me finishing it. And I had been reading it for a while, like I think 2 or 3 weeks, because I kept having to put it down because it deals with a lot of like police brutality and such. And in this case, it's in a fae world, but it's very, 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 it very much could apply to our world. And there were a lot of heavy topics in there that I've been annoyed with more recently, with it being election season in America. So I loved the commentary in this, but a lot of it was just too real for where the mindset I was in while I was reading it. So I did give this 5 stars. I'm so happy to have read H.E. Edgman's other books. I can't wait for them to come out with more, because again, some of their books have been on my favorites of the year, and I think they're going to stay there through the end of the year. So I'm very excited for them to write more. Next up, we have the book that I was reading almost exclusively while I was at work on break, which is why it took me so long to finish, and that is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I learned that this came out this year and is on a lot of like bestsellers lists or like top books of the year's lists, which shocked me because I didn't know that. I had only ever heard one booktuber, and they're from the UK, talk about this before I picked it up. I think I found it for like $1 at a library book sale too, so I was like, how did I find that new of a release at a library book sale for that cheap? Don't know, but I really enjoyed this. It's essentially similar to a portal fantasy, but there is time travel involved. I will not tell you how, but it is about this girl who finds a notebook, and she discovers that if she uses the notebook, any door can become a door to anywhere. So she can use it to open the door and like go to Paris. She can open any door, like her bedroom door, and if she uses the magic of the book and thinks really hard about it, she can open the door and she'll be in Paris, or whatever it is that was in her brain. Which the concept is obviously fascinating because it's a new take on like a portal fantasy. But there's like a dangerous world of these magic books, and she gets wrapped up in it thinking she had a fun little book about doors and traveling, and then she discovers the sinister side of the people who covet these books and are searching and searching and searching for new books every day. and a lot of them have very sinister intentions. And I think my opinion on this book probably would have been a little bit higher if I had not taken so long to read it and hadn't been distracted by a million other things. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. It's probably closer to a 4.5, but I'm sticking to the 4 for now. I really enjoyed this, and I'm glad to see a lot of other people really enjoying it as well this year. Next up is a book I have been wanting to read for years, like since it came out, because of the cover. We all wanted to read it when it first came out, and I feel like I remember hearing really, really mixed reviews on this, of people like really liking it and then people that hated it. Maybe I'm making that up because I was definitely still a Christian when this book came out, so I was like, that's a really pretty book, but it has a pentagram on it. I can't read that. Let's take a minute for no longer Christian Haley to think about that. But ever since then, every spooky season, this comes around as a recommendation from people for like spooky reads and like horror books and like gore. And I will say, if you are sensitive to gore, please don't read this. It is extremely gory. It's one of the more gory books about like witchcraft specifically that I have read. But I was hooked on this. I read it so fast, and I didn't even realize that there were like 4 books out in the series. I knew there were like 2 or 3. I didn't hear about the 4th one ever in the last couple of years, so I'm wondering if the series goes downhill, but I'm gonna definitely find out for myself because I'm about halfway through the 2nd one at this point. And I loved this. It like takes off really fast with the action. About halfway through the book, the action just starts and like builds and builds and builds all the way through the end of the book. The pacing is fantastic, and I really liked our main character. I like that there is a lot of almost unreliable narratory of she doesn't know what is real. She can't tell if she's hallucinating. She can't tell if her friends are actually up to this. There's a lot of gaslighting coming from the new people that she meets on either side of this situation, and I found it fascinating. I loved it, and I'm 100% going to read a bunch of Danielle Vega this fall because I've already looked up a bunch of her other books outside of the series, and they all sound great, so I gave this 5 stars. Next up, we have my least favorite read of the month, and that is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. And I was really excited for this. I had a friend recommend it to me based on the fact that I really loved The Spirit Bares Its Teeth. And I will preface this by saying I do see the similarities. I just think The Spirit Bares Its Teeth was better, in my opinion, and I think the reason I connected to The Spirit Bares Its Teeth, because I am not someone who likes historical fiction, like rarely at all. The reason Spirit Bares Its Teeth worked better for me is because there is a huge queer side plot to it that is a big part of our main character, and this one just fell into, it is set in like southern, I think it's Georgia, like rural Georgia, and it deals a lot with race, which I did really like the commentary on racism in this a lot, especially in the time period. I believe it's set in the 50s, and in my opinion that was the best part of the book, because I felt my biggest issue was with this is that there was not enough of the like ghost haunted plotline compared to a lot of the other things. I also think it was just a little bit too long. Like, this is a 10+ hour audiobook. I did listen to it on audio, and I feel like it should have been like a 7 or 8 hour audiobook. I don't have a better way of explaining why. That was just my own opinion on it. So while this does deal with very, very, very important topics, I do think this was a case of this book was not for me. I prefer, if I'm going into a book that has paranormal elements, I prefer there to be more paranormal than other things, and this just didn't have enough of the paranormal part, which was what the part I found most interesting about the book. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I'm unsure if I would give this author another chance, but we'll see if any of their other books interest me in the future. Then the last book I finished literally like not even a day and a half before the month ended was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This also dealt very heavily with racism, and I felt did the commentary on it a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. And this is about essentially like gentrifying neighborhoods that are meant to be, or that were originally owned by other races. So like whether it was natives, whether it was a predominantly Black community, whether it was predominantly Hispanic community. This deals a lot with that, of there are big corporations who are trying to convince people to sell their homes to them just so they can build like big blockbuster like office buildings and like a big hospital named after a white man and stuff like that. And this, I also will say, is a good representation of, it is creepy, but it is like, there's a little bit of an implication that there might be something paranormal going on here, and then it swerves away from that very quickly. But I still really enjoyed it, which is weird for me because I tend to, when it comes to horror, I tend to like paranormal things a lot more than if it ends up not being paranormal. That has been my issue with a lot of horror and thrillers over the years, is that it goes in the way I don't want it to because I prefer paranormal over or not. But I really thought the ending of this was wild, and the turn that it took, and like who was behind all of it was really interesting. I liked it a lot. I gave it 4 stars. I would read another thing by this author, absolutely, because the writing style and the pacing I felt was very, very well done. Then I'm going to jump into a really quick TBR because this video isn't very long because I only read 6 books. So for the month of September, I am definitely starting on my spooky season, but I'm starting off with the intention of reading more off the spooky books I have on my shelves, because I don't have as many spooky books as I have compared to like romance or like romantasy and stuff. So I am guilty every single year of putting every single spooky book I'm interested in on my October TBR and then never having the time to read all of them. So we're trying to avoid that this year by starting very early. And I feel like I've already started with the Merciless stuff, especially. Speaking of, the first 3 books on my September TBR are The Merciless 2, which again, I'm already halfway through. I'm loving it. Not quite as much as the first one, but I love the story so much. This one has more of a boarding school element, which is very fun and spooky. And then we have The Merciless 3. I know nothing about this one. This is my favorite of the covers, and I will probably be buying them physically unless they're atrocious and I hate them. And then The Merciless 4, which I didn't know existed. I've only ever seen the first 3, so I don't know if this book is really bad and nobody ever read it, or if they did, they didn't talk about it. Or what happened, because I've never seen this cover, and I feel like I see people talk about this series quite a bit over the last couple of years. So this one is not available through my library, so I'm probably gonna have to buy it used off like Amazon Marketplace or something. And then next on the TBR, I plan on reading Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This is his new release. I read a book of his, I want to say last year, called Camp Damascus, and he very much is in the realm of social commentary on religious trauma, and that's what Camp Damascus was, and this is his new one. If you didn't know, in like Hollywood, the term bury your gaze is like almost used in conjunction with like queer baiting and stuff, of like, yes, we'll have a token gay character, but that's all you're getting. They won't have like a full storyline, or if they do, it's not what queer people are actually interested in hearing with queer stories. So I'm very excited about this. I don't know a whole lot about it. I love the cover, and it's so vibrant, and I might end up buying this, but I believe I'm close on the library hold list, so I'm excited to read this one soon. Next up is there's a booktuber I've been following who does like spooky stuff year round. Her name is Katie, I believe, or Kat. I don't know what she goes by. I apologize. I found her more recently. And she keeps talking about this book, Brainworms, by Alison Rumfitt. And 1, I love this cover. 2, I've been really into the gory stuff, as I said, with The Merciless. And 3, I haven't read a lot of sci-fi, and this seems a little bit sci-fi. I haven't read a lot in the recent years, and I want to get back into it. So this is a big horror book of the season, it seems, so I figured I would give it a try. And then next on the TBR, we have a book that I keep seeing all of the like weird lit girlies on BookTube read, and that is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. 1, love the cover. 2, I know a local bookstore has it, so if I want to buy it and my library hold takes too long to come in, I will go buy it there probably, and that way I can support a local bookstore rather than Amazon, which is the case with a lot of these. Is I've been having issues finding certain books available to me physically without using Amazon, so I'm trying to get better about that. And I know this has something to do with a girl who becomes fascinated with, I believe it's her mother's partner's eyeballs. Do I know anything else? No. Do I want to know anything else? Not really. Sounds fascinating. And then an audiobook that I keep getting recommended is Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. I hear the audio is fantastic. I have put it off on my holds list on Libby for months now, waiting for spooky season, and I think it is finally time for it. I believe this is a haunted house story. I don't know much else about it besides that the audiobook is apparently fantastic. Then next up we have What I forgot is apparently a Phantom of the Opera retelling. There is some sort of like Phantom readathon going on that I heard about through Jen from the Book Refuge. So I was like, I feel like I have a Phantom retelling on my TBR, and I do. And I believe this has something to do with Broadway. But it is a Phantom retelling. This is the perfect opportunity for me to read it, and it's on KU, so I will have the physical or having it on Kindle. Having both of those easily accessible to me is the easiest way for me to get to read a book, because I can go back and forth between the two. Next up is a book that has been on my TBR forever, and that is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is, I know it has something to do with tarot, and this creature that there is a like vague plot of romance with is like in her head, I believe, and he's called the Nightmare. I know it's a duology. I've heard a lot of people either, if you like the romance in this, you don't like the second book, and if you think there's too much romance in this, you really like the second book because there's less romance in that one. So, which I find interesting, and I would like to see which side of that I am on, but I'm excited to finally get to this. I got this for Christmas, I think like 2 years ago, so it's time to finally read this one. And then next up, I found these in a little free library a couple months ago. And it's like a little series of like cozy mysteries, the first one being Death by Dumpling. And my library has most of them except for, I want to say it's this fourth one. And there's like 10 books in the series, and it has, my library has them up through book 7. So even if I don't want to read them in mass market paperback form, which I think might be fun. It's been a long time since I've read a mass market paperback of any kind, because these fall apart and get bent and all kinds of things so easily. But I'm going to put at least this first one on my TBR. And if I like them and they're fast, easy reads, I might read the other ones that I own. So I thought that might be fun to see if I even like cozy mysteries. I've tried them a couple of times, and I didn't love them, but I feel like I need to give them a little bit more of a try, because I think I only read like 2 in my life. Next up is another book I've had on my TBR for a while that is also on KU, and that is The Haunting of Bryn Wilder. And I believe this is set somewhere in the Great Lakes. I think it's like Lake Superior. Which, if you didn't know, I live very, very close to Lake Erie, so anything set near the Great Lakes I find really interesting, especially horror, because there are a lot of haunted-esque places around here. And this is something about her hearing voices coming from a door down the hall. I don't know a whole lot else about it. It's very, very short, so I feel like it'll be a quick read. And it's been on my TBR on my shelf for a while, so I feel like it's time to decide if I like it or not. And then I can plan accordingly of keeping it or getting rid of it as I try to knock down my physical TBR. And we have 2 more. We're getting there. And the next up I have The Stepson. This is a book I've never heard of, never heard anybody talk about it. I picked it up because this looks very much like it. It is on KU, so if you're interested in it, please go look for it there. And sometimes I like to just pick up a thriller I've never heard anybody talk about. And that was the case with this when I found it in a little free library in like perfect condition. And this is something about a man who's like obsessed. No, it's him. It is the man is obsessed with knowing where his wife is at all times, like 24/7. He has to know where she is, and it has something to do with like a childhood trauma of his, and it has a strain on their marriage, as you might imagine, and it seems like a psychological thriller. I don't know. It seems very stalkery. I tend to like stalker-esque thrillers, so I figured I would give it a try since I found it for no money in a little free library. And then last is a book I have gone back and forth with over the years of whether I even want to try, and that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I am way more interested, I will say, in her other series, the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which I have up there, but this one is more like circus-esque. I don't know if I'll like this series. I have heard the consensus that it gets worse as the trilogy goes on, and everybody really likes this one and doesn't really like the other 2. If you have read it, please let me know in the comments below to see your opinion on that, but I need to find out if I like this or not, and if it's just not for me, I will pass it along to someone else who's going to enjoy it more than I do. Oh. But yeah, that is my... I keep wanting to say July. It's not July anymore. It's quite literally September 1st when I'm filming this. But that is my August wrap-up. This is my September TBR. Thank you all for watching. If you've made it this far, please leave a witch's hat or something witchy in the comments down below. If you haven't seen from some of my new decor I've gotten from the Dollar Tree. But thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.